Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's good to be back. I know I've been gone for a hot minute. I think it's been at least, I don't know, that long since I've seen you guys, so yeah, it's definitely been a second. I had to take a break. Things kind of just got out of hand and I got too stressed about a number of things and this just fell to the wayside, but I've been working on building some habits and practices around that, and I figured my first video back, I wanted to share them with you guys. So I really have two main overarching philosophical goals, along with a handful of habits and apps that I use for those habits that I'm going to cover in this video. The first one is active externalism. It's basically the idea that your brain is not very good at doing the remembering thing, but it is very good at doing the thinking thing. So if that sounds like you, there's definitely a whole bunch of habits in there that I've started adopting that have helped me out quite a bit. Shout out to No Boilerplate, who had a really good video that got me started on this. I'll link to that in the description, so check that out if you want to see more on that. And then the second one is kind of a buzzwordy term, an umbrella term, just mindfulness practice. The whole idea there is that you should be present and intentional in your life and in the things that you do. The opposite of that is like you drive to work and you kind of show up at work and you show up there safely, but you don't really remember what you were doing the whole time because you're just on autopilot. So trying to get out of that and more into just soaking in everything that you do and being present in it. Real quick before we dive deep into any of these habits, I feel obligated to point out that, you're just listening to the account of one person, and I'm by no means an expert in this. I'm a software engineer by trade. Obviously, I enjoy doing YouTube videos as well, and these are just things that have worked for me. Normally this is where I'd call out to my friends and family, survivorship bias and statistics, but really, when you have a sample size of one, every bias applies to it. So take all this with a grain of salt, but hopefully it gives you guys some ideas or at least a road to follow to just improve your own lifestyle. So also, throughout this video, I'm gonna make a number of app recommendations. These are just genuinely what works for me. I'm also gonna try to provide a variety of recommendations so that you guys have a couple to play with, and it's not like I'm trying to push you into one corner, but I am not sponsored by any of them, obviously. All right, so off the bat, let's talk about active externalism. This, for those of you who haven't heard of it, is basically the idea that your brain thinks strong but remember bad. So write things down so that you can do more thinking and less thunk. It's basically just, the high intellect academic way of saying write things down and it'll make your life easier. I'm gonna break this up based on the different systems I have for writing different things down, because I have different tools and you pick the right tool for the job. So off the bat, we have note-taking. This is where I write down things. Obsidian seems to be the current meta. Logsec seems to be a close second, and there are a plethora of other apps that you can use to make this happen on top of just a regular pen and paper. The advice I usually give to people is, don't overcomplicate it. The best note-taking system functions similarly to how your brain works. So I picked up Obsidian a few months ago and I threw a bajillion plugins at it and had this really cool knowledge management, borderline data management architecture solution. And it was it took effort to use, and therefore I never got to build a habit around using it, because the more effort a habit takes, the less likely your brain is to integrate it. But yeah, so keep it simple and, take notes in whatever system works for you. And I would encourage you to play around with them. Two habits that I've formed around this practice. The first one I call the 3-minute rule. If I think about something for 3 minutes, it's probably worth writing down so I don't have to spend another 3 minutes rethinking about it. And then I have what I call the browser tabs rule. So any browser tab that I have either kept around for a long time, right, if it's lived more than 24 hours on my phone, or just a browser tab that I'm hesitant to close out of because I feel like I might need it later, gets written down in a note with context around it. So, it might get added to an existing note, or it might get added to a new note that's linked to other things. So it's basically just a really, really advanced version of bookmarking things. But yeah, second on this list is a to-do list. And this is where I write down my things that need to happen. Again, there's a bajillion apps out there for this. I mean, there's even just Microsoft To Do all the way to I use Todoist. But this is a really effective system because I could be doing anything, and the moment I go, oh, I need to remember to do that thing, it goes into my to-do list. And then when I wake up in the morning, I see the list of every single thing past me has ever wanted to do on that day. And sometimes I look at it and go, wow, past me, you were really ambitious. Let's move some of these to another day. And sometimes I wake up and go, no, this is realistic. And I think the big win for me was I woke up on a Sunday and, got through my morning routine and sat down with my cup of tea in the morning and pulled out my to-do list and, looked at what was on there and moved some things to another day and got everything sorted for how I wanted to spend the day. And then I did it, and come 11 in the morning, I was done with all of the items. And that's important because it's not just that I was done with the items that I remembered to do, I was done with every item that past me has ever thought about doing on that Sunday. And the rest of the day is however I want to spend it, which is a really, really good feeling. And that kind of lends itself into time management habits or time management practice that I've been trying to build. And I use Google Calendar, but again, there's Google Calendar, I'm sure Apple has a calendar, Microsoft has a calendar, and then there are tons of apps for just integrating with those calendars. But the big thing is to have a calendar where you can write down things that need to happen at a specific point in time. And this is important because things that usually need to happen at a specific time need to happen at a time because they involve other people. And a calendar app is a much better tool than something like just a to-do list or Obsidian because it generally has features that let you invite other people to that event or mark it as recurring or kind of manage all those things. So together, those three sort of practices work in a really cool way because it means that everything that I need has a spot to live. Either it's a thing that needs to happen at a specific point in time, or it's just a thing that needs to happen, or it's just a thing. And no matter which one of those three things it is, I have a place to put it. And this kind of lends itself to a simplified version of Alan's input processing technique. And if you want to read more about it, please just Google that phrase, it'll come up. I don't know who Alan is, but his input processing technique is pretty baller. But to sum it up in really, really, really few words, the idea is basically that when you get interrupted to do something, you will handle that thing right then so that you can go back to doing whatever it was you were doing in the past. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you were going to immediately solve or tackle that thing. It just means you are going to handle it in some way so that you can call it done for the moment. So if someone messages me and says, hey, do you want to have dinner on Friday? The first thing I'll do is go pull up my calendar and pull up Friday night. And if it's free, I'll say yeah, and I'll put a block down. And if it's taken, I'll, suggest another time. On the flip side, if I'm doing something important and I don't have time to go pull up my calendar, I'll just pull up my to-do list and say, reply to Fred, and move on with life. And now I don't have to remember that I even need to go pull up my calendar to look at that because I have a to-do list item that will remind me to reply to him. And on the flip side, if I put it on my calendar, then when I get to that day, I will be reminded that I have dinner with him. So in either case, I can 100% lay that to rest and just go back to focusing on whatever it was that I'm doing, which is really fascinating because I've started incorporating this thing in my life that I call the virtue of single-pointedness. I'm kind of borrowing it from Buddhism. It's called ekagrata. I'm probably doing a terrible job of understanding it because I've learned about it through a couple of books. So, leave me a comment in the comment section if I'm absolutely bastardizing this phrase. But the idea is that you should be able to focus your mind and your entire state of being on one thing at a time. And if you go, I would like to enjoy this cup of tea, you should be able to involve all 5 senses and enjoy that cup of tea. And on the flip side, if I'm at work and I go, hey, I really need to focus on that thing, I should be able to devote every single brain cell in my tiny little head to that thing. And when I get interrupted, I can process that interruption and go back to this. So it's really this cool system where I have all of these tools for active externalism that start playing into my mindfulness practice, which is what we'll talk about next. Mindfulness is being present in the current moment. The opposite of mindfulness is not being present in the current moment. Again, this is like what happens when you drive to work and you don't remember how you got there. You were not present in all of those moments in between. I'm going to borrow an idea from Buddhism that they call ekagrata. I think I said that right. It's basically the virtue of single-pointedness, the idea that you should be able to focus your mind on one specific thing. And it's really hard. This is actually the goal of a number of meditation practices where you kind of just sit down and you focus on something. I like to focus on breathing. And then the idea is that I should be able to focus my brain entirely on breathing. And it almost never works out that way because you catch your mind wandering off into other places, or you're focusing on your breathing, but you're also kind of having a number of thoughts in the background. But much like going to the gym, right? You can't go to the gym and hit your goals on day one, so you constantly work up towards it. And it's really useful to not think of, hey, I went to the gym and I didn't meet my goals. It's I went to the gym and I got a little closer and I got a little better. And every day as you do that over and over and over, you get eventually to a point where you can reach that state sometimes. It's really useful. So I've really enjoyed meditating, which has helped a lot. I've also started bullet journaling in an app called Dailyo. It's really fantastic. I haven't been able to do much journaling in the past just because it's hard to put thoughts onto a blank page, and it also takes a while when you have to pick the words. The idea of bullet journaling is you do neither of those things. You basically have this questionnaire that you fill out. I do it a couple times a day, but if you're starting out, just do it once a day. And you basically pick the questions and the answers, and it's all just multiple choice. You check the boxes that apply to you, and then you're done. But you have a log of what happened on that day, especially once you customize it. You have a log of the things that matter to you on that day. And then you can start drawing statistics and inferences across them, which is something really cool that you can't yet do in regular journals. I'd imagine LLMs and AI will help us do that in the future, but for the time being, it's much easier and much more concise to do this than a bullet journaling format. So 10 out of 10 would recommend it. It's fantastic. But both meditation and bullet journaling, the idea is just to be intentional with everything you do, be present, because you'll get to the journal and realize that you weren't present throughout the day. So again, it's kind of a nice check after the day is over. And then the last point that also kind of folds into this in a bit more of a weird modern tech bro kind of way is the buzzword make data-driven decisions, but it really is a big thing that I practice in my personal life as well, because I do have to consume quite a bit of news for my job. I have to stay on top of the latest tech trends and the latest happenings in the world and, the latest legal cases with AI and all those different things. And it's very easy to, read the news and get overwhelmed, as a lot of people do. But when you're making a data-driven decision, you're putting the decision first and then collecting data about it. And it's really important to do that because the decision you're making will drive the pedigree of the data that you need to make it. So for example, if I'm making a strategic decision in my career, I'm probably going to collect a lot of data from a lot of highly reputable sources. I'm going to question everything and really try to get to the bottom of it. And if I'm making a meme, I will probably grab the first headline that comes to mind and make a meme, because ultimately it doesn't really have to have that much depth to it if the goal is hee hee ha ha and we move on with life. Who cares if it was wrong, kind of thing. And having that is really important, because if you read an article and you don't know what decision you're going to make with it, I found that at least I have the tendency to then rabbit hole in on it and really just try to make sure it's 100% true, when you can't really know if anything's 100% true. And hence the point is it needs to be true enough to make the decision at hand with it. And if you don't have a decision at hand you're making with it, why even bother? Note that the thing exists so you can come back to it later if you need it and just move on. It's not worth your time. And again, that allows you to then be more present in the current moment, because if the current moment does have a decision, you are working towards the current moment. And if the current moment doesn't have a decision, then you're letting everything else go so that you can focus on what actually is happening in the present. It's really powerful when you put it all together. So putting this all together obviously creates this really cool, really powerful system, because you can view a lot of your mindfulness practice as trying to be present in the moment. And a lot of active externalism is doing the same thing. The active externalism, to me, is the tool that allows me to cut out a lot of the background noise in my head that happens, when I'm meditating or when I'm trying to focus, that prevents me from being present in the current moment. So, back to the data-driven decisions, you find a news article that's interesting, but you don't have a decision you're making on it, write it down in your notebook and then move on with life. And if you ever need it again, it's right there and you know where to find it. And if you don't need it again, it's not occupying space in your brain. Flipping it on its head, we have Alan's input processing technique, where the idea is that when something comes up, you're going to make a note of it in your to-do list or in your calendar that you need to do a thing. And if you have amplifying details, they can go into your to-do list or into your notebook. And then again, you drop it until you need to do it, and you go back to being present. It definitely takes some practice. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but it certainly has helped me quite a lot in just managing the noise in my head. So hopefully you guys find this as useful as I did. Obviously, I'm trying a little bit of a different format here, definitely a little bit of a different type of content, so I'd love to hear from you guys in the comment section. You know, was this useful? Was this not useful? Was there anything that I could have done differently to make it more useful to you guys? But yeah, hope you guys have a good day, and if it's Friday, have a great weekend. Catch you guys in the next video.